right? You want to see how many extra 1,000 links every day that you're getting, and people are talking about you, what they're saying about you. I discovered there's an East Malaysian that had the same name as me that crept up to number 5 on the search, and I said, no way, I've got to SEO his ass down. I'm sorry, I'm a bit competitive. But yeah, people find out a lot about who we are when they Google us. They get a page that looks a bit like this. And I guess that's the start of what you talk about when you say reputation. What do people find when they look for you online? Do they find your face, your picture? Do they find your product? We hope so. That's why you hire SEO experts for millions of dollars. I swear to you, I've not hired a single one to SEO my name. Right? Do they find good things about you? Do they hear bad stories? Do they get links to horror stories from consumers who completely lost faith about your product? And I guess that's what it really is all about. When we go online, what do people find out about us? Or what do people find out about our company? Being digital, I feel strongly, isn't just about that snazzy microsite that you've just launched, number of fans on your Facebook page. It's really about what people say about you, isn't it? It's not so much about how many fans you've accumulated. If none of those fans say a single good word for you, but you've just got one noisy fan, pesky fan that's been posting on your Facebook wall every day, where's my PC? I've sent it to support for the past 2 weeks and haven't heard back from your customer support person, right? And they found you. So what's your reputation online? What do people say about you online? And let's think about this for a while. Has everything changed? And I guess so, because if you look at it, right, this happened, and I'm just going to flash up like pictures, so don't expect me to talk about it because everyone knows this case study, right? This happened, right? If you don't know, you can put up your hand and I can explain a little bit, right? This happened, right? Amazon failing. The oil slick happened. Something happened else. Verizon happened. Melamine happened, right? Comcast sleeps happens, and of course Domino's people, forget that, happened, right? And what's changed? What's really changed? And if you wanted me to talk a little bit about how I see this whole landscape change, because I come from a PR background and we deal a lot with managing reputation, and we care a lot, an awful lot about what people say about us. And what's really changed, I guess, is that in all these cases, the PR company, the poor PR chap, he couldn't wait for 24 hours to let me talk to some spokesperson within my company that's going to take 3 days to get back to me, and I'll come back to you with an official sounding response. It happened in real time. It was fast. People were spreading news at an awesome pace because of social media. What else happened, right? You notice that all these were stuff that kind of happened, and especially this Domino's one, right? Who betrayed the company? It was just a lowly, I don't know, you don't call him an exactly, what do you call him already? He's not a chef. Well, it's a worker that's like in one of your Domino's branches that's probably not even your own branches, it's a franchise, right? That was digging his nose and pretending to dig his nose and put his, Chinese we call it Beisi. If you are not Chinese, it's called gold that you dug from your nose. and he pretended to put it into the pizza, right? And this guy, somebody within your organization can cause you a crisis automatically because people, they've got so much access to telling the world about stuff, just like this guy. And I can spot off a number of other things that are happening, but the whole point of this is things are happening faster, real time, right? People within your company, employees, can be sharing and breaking bad news. They could be the source of all your pain, you PR people. And things get shared faster than ever to a wider audience than ever. And this is not new. You probably heard it said like 7 times this morning already, right? But everything's changed. Right, my computer is not working. At the same time, nothing's changed. And maybe if we look closely at the situation of the world today and what's going on, has anything really changed? We are still dealing with people. We are still dealing with the real issues. Now, if I had you know, can you imagine that last one, the Domino's guy, right, the YouTube video, can you imagine if he delivered the pizza and before he gave it a pizza, like, suck it, right? It still has the same disgusting effect. So, what's changed really? And I guess that the more things change, the more we find that there are still underlying principles, that people are still people, they still respond to how you deal with events, how you deal with crises, how you deal with disfavorable news in the same way. What do they want? They want good, honest answers. They want fast, timely responses. Your customers want customer service. And if your company has had the habit of shoving all these issues under the carpet, then really one thing has changed. What's changed is suddenly it's being exposed. And I want to talk a little bit about this because that's where we are at right now. And as the world continues to expand and many people start getting access to the internet and they share everything and everything, I tell you, food also want to share every day. I see 3 tweets a day from this person about breakfast, lunch and dinner. But if everyone can share everything, right, then we've got a problem. So I'm just going to talk about 5 key lessons I think that we need to learn about being online, and especially for companies that want to go online. And I didn't know that there would be so many intelligent agency people in the room, right? And they told me to be practical because some of the people here just want to learn something. So I'm very practical. So if you know this already, sorry, please don't curse me, right? But I really think that the first lesson that you need to be is be present. And what am I talking about? When dealt with a crisis, most of us understand that the first thing that you need to do is get your viewpoint out there, right? And it's the same thing on social media, even before the crisis, right? Where are people getting information about you or your company online, on social media today? Are they going to your website? Are they going to your blog? Are they going to your Facebook group? Are they going to your Twitter? Or are they going to somebody else's blog, Twitter, Facebook page, LinkedIn profile, YouTube channel? Where are they going? And I always have this firm belief that we need to own our own place. Companies need to have a place, a presence, where people can find them so that they can share unfiltered what they think and be honest and give their take on the situation without people, without it being reinterpreted by media, bloggers or whatsoever. And I think that's a very important point, right? Because many companies simply today, and I was just speaking at yesterday's SME Internet conference, right? And I discovered that a lot of the people inside the room, they were saying like, look, we don't even have a website. But maybe it's not so important for them, right? But if you're a really huge agency or you're a really huge company, right, that website is going to be very important. What you put on that website is going to be very important because that's your presence. And that's where people are going to find out about you. But if you don't have a website and you're a huge company and you make a product that you sell to multiple people, right, and it's got a huge opportunity for controversy, then you better start thinking about being present. But I also like to think that, before a crisis strikes, you do want to be present already. You want to have that established relationship. You want people to know where they can come to you for information. You want bloggers to know that, hey, my name is the number to call when such and such brand comes into a crisis, right? Or you've got questions or anything, so that people are not just spouting off what they think is the truth on the internet. You want them to be able to go somewhere and know where this place is to get right information. And I think BP did a great job with that when they dealt with the oil slick. They turned BP.com into the front page into a response, and they had this cam train on what's going on at the oil spill, and you could see unfiltered what BP was really doing. And I think that was important because you can imagine the circus that was going around now. It's not to say that the crisis didn't hurt them, it did, but could you imagine how much more hurtful it would have been if all that people were hearing is exaggerated reports in the media, unfair stories, only one-sided commentary. But here it was on the web that BP could actually give its side of the story unfiltered. I want to talk a little bit about a second principle that I think about being online, right? Be consistent. And I think there's a lot of good that comes out of being consistent. And maybe for those of you that manage communities or online presences, you might have a Facebook page, you might have a LinkedIn profile, you might have a YouTube page, and I try and think about this for myself as a person, and you could apply this for yourself as a person, or if you're managing a brand, apply this to your brand, right? 4 things I think you should be consistent about. The first thing, think about your naming convention, and this is being very practical already, right? Let's say your name is Avatar Boy, right? Please go to every website and just be Avatar Boy, right? I think it's a lot easier when people can recognize that your name is the same and you're the same person in this forum, that forum, or 50 other forums, right? Have a consistent avatar. Let people recognize that pretty face of yours, in every single channel, whether you're on Discuss, and I think it actually works. People recognize faces, and I recognize tons of people who comment on the same blogs as I do because their Discuss profile is there, and I recognize that it's the same guy from Twitter as well, right? But more importantly, especially if you're a brand, if you're on multiple channels, and I see some brands really failing at this, where they set up 20 different Twitter accounts and then they all sound different, right? You need to have a consistent voice. What you're saying needs to sound alike, right? It needs to be that same voice. And this voice, I think if it's for a brand, the brand should have its own voice. And someone in the company needs to define this, right? It shouldn't be left to the precipices of me, the person behind the Twitter account. And when I resign, Twitter's going to start sounding like somebody else. Or if you're using an agency, when you swap agencies, it starts sounding like something else, right? So have you defined this voice? What does your brand sound like? What does, and is that consistent with the core values of your brand, right? Consistent content. I'm not saying you copy and paste the same content across all the channels. I hate companies that do that, right? Some people are so lazy, right? They link their Twitter to Facebook, and automatically every tweet becomes a Facebook update. It irritates me to no end, right? But your content needs to be in agreement with one another. And I've got this interesting case study I can't name for this big company in Malaysia, right? They were running a big promotion. I shouldn't say the industry, but they were running a big promotion to sell something very valuable to you that fits in your pocket at a very low price. Only thing was, I don't know who messed up the creative. Apparently, the Twitter post with the linked image had the wrong price. It was $200 cheaper. And then the updated Facebook one said $499. Right? And it messed up. It caused a hoo-ha. It made people angry and feel cheated. Now, somewhere along the line, the process didn't work. The content wasn't the same. It wasn't consistent with one another. I think that's really important because I've seen this not just happen once, but 2-3 times in the last couple of months. And it's very important that you make sure that your content is consistent and the message in that content is consistent, right? So I'm going to move on. That's point number 2. Still got 15 minutes. Number 3, I think it's a very important B. Be authentic. Now, I get that in marketing, sometimes we want to put an image out there that's aspirational, that people aspire to, that people like, people enjoy, that resonates with people. And sometimes that isn't really the nature of your company. Actually, your company is dark, sinister, and evil. But we want to tell you that through My Little Pony ads, we are soft, cuddly, and huggable, right? No, I think that's wrong. That's something that's bad. And if your company is evil, you should quit today. Don't work for an evil company. Work for a good company. And I believe all our companies want to be good, right? So what's authenticity, right? It's about action and not lip service. And I find this so true that on social media, people start hating your reputation. You start getting a reputation for being a company, and people start disregarding your company. And if people disregard your company, ask yourself why. It's because your actions do not match your words. It's lip service, right? I'll give you a very good example. There's another phone company. Not phone company. There's a company in Malaysia that I subscribe to, and I am their customer. And on their website, award-winning customer service. We care about you. But when you pick up, it's so ironic. You call their customer service, you end up waiting for 10 minutes, listening to a machine playing back. Branding cares about you. Please hold on, and we will be with you shortly. 10 minutes later, Ding, 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 branding cares about you, and we will be with you shortly. Now, it's interesting, there's a disconnect there, right? You are telling people you care about them, but your call center, is staffed by maybe one miserable person, and I know because I work with, I work with a bunch of youth, and they take part-time jobs in call centers and all that, and these are the kind of people that you hire to do your customer service, right? Because they're cheap. But you're telling your customers you care about them, I mean, I've also had the experience of dropping off a PC, a phone, right? And people tell me, yeah, best customer service, and it's always that little bit of sell, but it doesn't connect because why? I wait 3 weeks later, I don't get a phone call back, I get angry, and that's not the truth. And what do I do about it? Then I go on Twitter and I start making a ruckus, and then they quickly contact me, hey, yeah, you didn't get back your phone, huh? Okay, tomorrow, don't worry, we'll call you back, sir, right? But did I have to go online to create a ruckus so that they will contact me? No. And your company shouldn't have to either, right? And so I guess the biggest challenge with this is, is your company authentic? Is what you say and what you tell customers that you care about them consistent with the way you behave? Don't just say online. No, don't just let your social media team be the bastion of customer goodness, and then people will start going to your Twitter account every time they've got a problem. But be consistent all around within your company. Don't wait for that crisis to start. Oops, sorry. I'll quickly move on. Don't wait for that to happen, right? Number 4, the fourth B is be relevant. And I find that this is interesting about many social media presences, that they set up an account. They want to get into a conversation, but what you're getting is essentially tweets linked to press releases. Right? Yesterday I saw a tweet from an irate blogger that said, why doesn't agency X that services client N get it? They spam me with press releases every day. And that's not the first time I've seen that. And I've seen Twitter feeds that look like news feeds and pushing information that's not relevant. So who are you really trying to speak to? Because I see 2 subscribers to your account, right? I think companies have this way of disillusioning yourself and making you think that convincing ourselves that what the customer really wants is what I think they want, right? But IBM did this study, and I'm sorry that the chair is blocking, right? You can't really see that. Go and download it, it's really great, right? But there was this graph that I stole that shows a big perception gap, right? I can tell you, customers are really cheap. All they really want is bigdeal.sg. 61% discount and 55% want to purchase, right? Now, I'm sorry I blocked it, but if you can see this line, it actually draws all the way down here. The businesses that were studied thought that was the lowest priority of what the customer wants. Instead, what did the customers really want about their website? To learn about a great new product, which was actually somewhere in the middle. To get general information, right? To feel connected. Now, I think, have we really studied what our customers want from our social media presence? Is that part of our study, or we assume and we go online and we do it? And we just do, right? Are we relevant to why our customers want us to be online? I think that's a question that we need to ask. Number 5, be human, and this links back strongly to the content. And I can't stress this enough, that sometimes the companies that I've seen and I've worked for, they just don't want to be human. They want to send you long press releases and statements, right? They don't want to speak in a human voice. They want to speak in a corporate voice. But I think that really, when you're engaging and you want to build that reputation online, and you want to have that profile online, that you want people to find you online, people engage with you because you're really human, and they see that you care. And I don't need to spout off the examples of companies that have built this to great success, right? I especially like companies where representatives are given the leeway to use their name at whichever company they work for, and tell you that, hey, I'm actually a real person working within this company, and I'm here to service you, or I'm here to share with you some information. And that really adds an extra dimension to social media. After all, it's social, and social is about being human, and if we are not human, I think we're missing one of the big points. Alright, another part of my brief, right, they say, talk a little bit about crisis. I only have 3 slides about crisis. So I've touched on intermittently about being online, and I really think being online is more than just about being there and maintaining a reputation so that when crisis strikes, you can survive the crisis, right? But I want to spend a little bit more express time on crises. And I think there are 6 principles in new era crisis communications that we need to think about in this world today. I'll just talk about it briefly. The first point is vigilance. So if you're thinking about how do I prepare for a crisis, when don't wait until the crisis strikes. Be vigilant. Many companies don't, and I cannot stress how many times I get this, right? Sometimes I get a call and says, can we set up monitoring in 24 hours for this crisis, right? Or I need 3 hours set up for this issue that's about to break. You need to monitor all the time and be aware of what crisis might be creeping up, right? Internal versus external. I think we are talking to 2 audiences now, and especially the internal audience has suddenly become much more important, right? It used to be that you stop everyone and say only press gets stopped, right? It's very important now to make sure that is being adhered to, right? So anytime an internal person comes, a lot of crises are complicated when people speak out of line. People cleaning up the oil spill tell you things that that's not official information. People that are handing out the compensation tell the press certain things that are not official information. I think it's more important that the whole company needs to know what's the game, right, or what's the game plan, so that there's no confusion of information and facts, right? Real time crises happen much faster now, and so you need to understand that you might need a real-time response and really set up a station to do that. It's 360 degrees, so information comes from left, right, and center. Don't just think that it's your own institution that needs to be wary of the information you're putting up. There'll be many commentators on blogs. There'll be partner stakeholders, government that's going to be sharing information, and even the lowliest government servant that's involved in whatever crisis you're in can make a passing comment, and then that becomes a whole complex issue by itself. It's amplified, everything gets louder, and authenticity still remains the key, right? So I think these are just 6 things about crises that we need to think about. And I'll just quickly zoom through this. A simple workflow, but I want you to notice that this workflow isn't all that different, right? Listening is going to be very important right now. So the first thing you need before a crisis strike is already to be there. To be there monitoring the channels. I think in prepare, not only just be prepared with a crisis comms plan, but I think it's also important to have your relationships in place. I've done this with several clients where, because of existing relationships we've had with key opinion leaders and people on the web, we could go to them directly and explain the situation that, look, the battery isn't really exploding, it's just overheating, right? And clarify the issue before it became big, right? But if you don't have those contacts, you've never fostered those relationships before, you're going to get hit because they're not going to believe you in a time of crisis. As equally important is to make sure you set up your social media channels. There was an airline that created, I can't remember, I think it's American Air, that created a blog on the day of a crisis. And no one was reading that blog, so it was largely ineffective, right? But if you have a channel that everyone trusts you and are already attuned to, you can easily put out those information quickly, right? So that when a crisis happens, you can immediately start thinking about engaging, reviewing, refining, and going back to listening, right? So just a couple of statements, right, that I think is important here. Social media has changed the nature of crisis communications, but the principles remain pretty much the same, right? I guess the biggest change is that it's critical to understand where all the information can come from, what all the influences are, and make sure that all your employees understand the same thing. I don't think you can rely on news media solely as the route for crisis communications anymore. It's not just about the newspaper. You need to warn and place an ad. Constant monitoring is vital, and you need to be there before the crisis happens, right? And authenticity is the main thing, right? You can't just say that, look, we're cleaning up, but no cleanup is really happening. Could you imagine if BP spilled some oil and then, we're cleaning up, but a helicopter flies over and oh, large oil slick and no one's working. Everyone's losing, right? You need to be authentic. In closing, and I've just got a couple more points to make, and this is the last slide. I just want to talk a little bit about some concepts. Being online isn't a choice anymore. It's a choice for my father, who is 60 years old, and it doesn't really matter if it's online, right? Although if I Google his name, I do find 1 or 2 links, right? But if you're not saying anything about yourself, likely someone else is, especially if you are a brand, especially if you're a public figure, right? You know, you can't say, I'm going to ignore the whole online world and I'm going to just sit here and do nothing. And what you need to make sure is that you need to get that presence online. But at the same time, you need to understand that who you are offline is who you are online. You can't say great